want to take is to treat it as a crime scene. Bring the police in, have them do whatever they want to do. Another is to take the device out and destroy it. But then again, you're no further ahead. And what I like to encourage people to do is to have a hidden camera installed, observing the device. Once that system is in place, then put a fault on the device so it stops working.
So we can basically come in and see who's put this device in and identify who it is that planted it.
Document who comes in to fix it or replace it.
I see.
Now you know who you're up against.
Okay. Now, Doug, if I own a public company, for example, or I'm in a situation where we're going to have confidential meetings, you know, for example, we're talking about share prices or things in a company that could affect the movement of stock, or alternatively, you know, we have a patent or something, there's going to be some major change. Is there any level of times we should be doing this? Should it be done every single meeting? Or how long does the sweep last for? I mean, we sweep it now. How long are we good for? Like, what would you recommend? Is there any frequency that people out there should know how much we should be doing this?
It depends totally on the access to the room once it's swept. If it's then open to other employees or other people afterwards, the sweep is negated.
Okay.
It's over and done with. Usually, given that scenario, I will go in before a sweep or before a job takes place, ensure there's nothing going at that time, and then usually stay there for the first hour or so through the meeting to make sure that the participants haven't brought a device in with them to compromise it. So
it's probably a good idea after the sweep's done to lock the door and make sure that no one. Would you suggest, or?
Well, it's normal to lock the door. It's also normal to have certain rules in place about who is attending the meeting, that they're not allowed to bring in their cell phones, they're not allowed to bring in convenience devices that can record or transmit the conversations. When you're talking integrity of a room, you're basically looking at a control issue. And the more that you can control what's going on in that room, the more likelihood is that it's not going to be compromised.
Okay, now Doug, can you just kind of walk us through an example of what you would do to let us know if there's a wireless device in this room?
All right. Well, first of all, I would set up my antenna systems, set up my spectrum analyzer and my receiver, connect everything up. Now, I have two types of antenna systems here. One is the vertical antenna, and that essentially is getting signals from a 360-degree radius. This antenna here is more directive. It basically will determine where the signal is coming from, what aspect of the boardroom or the building the signal comes from. It can also determine polarity, of course. It's necessary. It's very efficient in the microwave region, whereas the other antenna is efficient in the VHF and UHF region. So once I have the equipment all set up, then what I have to do is align my equipment. To do that, I've got all kinds of nifty buttons on the front of the equipment. So I literally go to the uppermost parameters of the spectrum.
So we're searching the higher frequencies first. Is that what you're saying? We're starting high and go low?
Yeah, I like to go high and then come down low.
Okay.
I like to be able to look at certain bandwidths of the spectrum as I'm going down. And as I'm doing it, of course, I don't want to miss any segments, so I have my basic segments overlap each other as I'm tuning down in frequency.
Okay.
When I start going down in frequency, again, I use push buttons on the front of the spectrum analyzer, and it allows me to selectively hop down, in this case 50 megahertz at a time. And when I do come across a signal, then I can stop, I can look at the signal, I can determine if it raises a red flag or not, if it should or shouldn't be there, if it's a commercial TV station, if it's a wireless microphone, if it's a digital TV signal, on and on and on. And if it does raise a red flag, then I can adjust the parameters of the spectrum analyzer to literally pull that signal apart.
Okay.
So I can see what it's consisting of, if there's audio products to it, if there's digital products to it, if there's subcarrier products to it, and determine what's going on, if it's of relevance.
Sorry to interrupt you. What's the second scanning looking device for? What is that one for?
Okay, this basically augments the spectrum analyzer.
Okay.
It's a very classy scanner receiver, you might say. If I do pick up a signal that's of concern to me, and I'm just not sure at the time what it's all about, I can tune that signal in on this receiver. I can listen to that signal while I continue on doing the actual sweep with the spectrum
So it
analyzer.
sounds like this one is letting you hear it better, this one's letting you look at the signal better, is that
It's allowing me to look at the signal or listen to it if I choose to. If it's a video signal, it will actually allow me to see the video product.
Okay.
If it's a commercial TV station, we can see the TV station. If it's a hidden camera, it'll actually show us what the camera's looking at.
Okay. Okay, we're going to continue on to our next part of the counter-electronic debugging sweep, and I'm going to create a possible scenario that might be ran into. Let's say, for example, there was a device planted here, but it's something old. Maybe it's a device that's a year old, or perhaps it was a device that was recently placed, but the battery or the power to that device is now dead. So if it was a first-time sweep, perhaps what do we do, for example, if there were devices in here which were very, very old? So now, Doug, how do we handle a scenario like that where there are possibly devices in a boardroom, but they're not active, they're dead?
Okay, essentially we use a piece of equipment called a nonlinear junction detector. It's not a metal detector, it's actually a very specialized piece of equipment, and it detects the presence of semiconductors, parts that make up bugging devices. It's quite an expensive piece of equipment, but what it will do is tell us if in fact there's semiconductors within a boardroom table or a chair or a book or whatever we want to know if it's been compromised or not.
So, I mean, it looks like a metal detector to me, but what you're saying is basically what this device is doing, if I understand it correctly, is looking for anything that would have a makeup of a microphone, but it's a semiconductor detector? Is that what you're saying?
That's right. In other words, it will tell you if there's diodes or transistors or integrated circuits, regardless if they're turned on or off, or if the equipment has a dead battery in it. Okay. You know, it'll tell you that the electronics is there.
So even if this was, let's say, for example, I had an employee I fired a year ago, and he bugged me for a little bit, got something on me, this is going to find devices that are dead, no longer here.
That's correct.
Okay. Can you just walk us through how this...
Well, certainly. Well, the first thing I have to do is turn this piece of equipment on, and it takes about a minute to set itself up. It's computer driven inside. This particular instrument is imported from England. It's quite expensive, runs over $30,000.
Wow.
But it does the job. Not only will it do what you described, it's also very handy in listening to telephones. Telephones in a lot of cases have hands-free features, and we want to know if the hands-free feature is being used as a bugging device. Has somebody manipulated the switch, the telephone switch, the PBX? Have they activated the hands-free feature, and are they in fact listening to room conversation? And this will allow us to determine that as well.
Okay.
Okay? So what I'll do is just, for instance, here is what looks like a very innocent book. However, when we open the book, we'll see that inside is a tape recorder. It's not running, there's no battery in it, there's no tape in it, but it's telling us that electronics is there.
Wow.
This is particularly handy if you're sweeping a law office where they have thousands of books and you want to know if one or more of those contains electronics. Okay? It's also handy for actually sweeping the furniture itself or chairs, whatever you're interested in. Insofar as telephones are concerned, we have a telephone over here, and we can go into what's called the monitor mode, which allows us to hear what's going on inside of electronic items. So we can go to the telephone. In this case, it's telling us that electronics is there. It's active. We can hear a pulsing noise inside, but we're not getting any feedback between the telephone and the equipment, which tells us that the hands-free isn't discreetly turned on. Okay?
So this telephone is a safe telephone.
Right now it's safe.
Yes.
It's not prudent to leave it hooked up during a meeting, however.
Okay.
You know, because somebody could conceivably go to the PBX, access and target the phone, and discreetly turn on the hands-free feature.
Okay.
So it's always a good measure to unplug the phone prior to a meeting.
My name's Kevin Bousquet. Thank you for joining us, and you've been watching Undercover.